Hey there, welcome to Salt City Hoops once again. My name is Mark Pereira, running it to you solo here on a fine Wednesday evening. It'll probably be Thursday or Friday when you actually tune in and check us out, or something like that. Maybe it's far many moons into the future. But that's what we're doing on a Wednesday night, is after finishing an 11-point loss on the road to the Detroit Pistons, but recapping the week that was in Utah Jazz basketball. And I hope you all had a fabulous Halloween. I'm sitting here munching on the remnants of my kids' Halloween candy. What's kind of disappointing is that we have like a planned route through the neighborhood for trick-or-treating, and halfway through the kids all said that they wanted to go home because they were tired. Now, I was kind of tired too, so I'm very much welcome to that. But that means that there's half as much candy for me to steal from them. So my favorite candy, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, I wasn't able to get as many of those this year. But that's probably good for me. And I hope you all had a wonderful Halloween. But what is spookier, and I coincidentally am wearing all black today. We are in mourning today in Jazz Nation, as we learn that Walker Kessler needs shoulder surgery and will take him out of the entire season. Torn labrum is the report that was aggravated by shoulder bursitis. And this is not an 8 to 12 week injury or a 16-week injury that they're going to milk. It's that he won't be able to actually start doing a bunch of real hard physical rehab until March or April to begin with. So he's out for the season. A massive, massive blow to so many things. Let's count them. The energy to the start of the season is buoyed in large part because of the wins and the competitiveness that the Jazz were able to have because of his presence on the court. His performance itself. We saw a mini leap from Walker Kessler and what we've seen from him in the 5 games that he played so far. Accurate three-point shooting. A nasty streak. The only solid communicator on defense on the floor. And while the defense was playing poorly, it certainly wasn't his fault. Going into an offseason where, as a restricted free agent, he was going to get a new contract. 99.99% chance that it'll remain with the Jazz. We'll talk about that in a second. Actually, let's talk about that now, just because I'm thinking of it. So Walker Kessler, the biggest story for him was, hey, the Jazz weren't going to give him an extension on his rookie contract before the season because the Jazz were sitting on $43 million in cap space going into the summer. And if you sign Walker Kessler to an extension now, before the season, it automatically subtracts from that cap space right away. Whereas if you wait to sign him next summer, you can do that order of operations after you do some other cap stuff like signing free agents or trading for expensive players. Then sign him. You can do that. You can sign players before you book up your salary cap, right? But if you've booked up your salary cap, you can't bring in external players so easily. But you can sign your own players over the salary cap due to exceptions on the books that many of you know about. So you want to wait to do the Walker Kessler new contract after you do all your other stuff. And we're looking at something like $20 to $30 million as like a wide range of a per year contract for Walker Kessler. Now, what he was starting with this season was looking a lot like maybe the upper band of that. Like, it was looking like he was, because of his mini leap, it was going to be a very expensive risk taken by the Jazz to wait until next summer to do so. Still would have helped them from a salary cap machinations perspective. So I think the Jazz were rooting for him to take a mini leap as well. Sure, become a 17 point per game scorer. Sure, shoot all the threes you want. The Jazz are in a position right now trying to get better. Yeah, we want to pay for good players. That's not really we're not hoping that Walker Kessler plateaued. We were all very, very happy to see his little mini leap. What was on the outside chance, not a totally far-fetched thing, but an outside chance, was the Jazz could still use Walker Kessler as a premier trade asset. Teams who can make some sort of, under the table sort of arrangement with Walker Kessler's representation as to what his offseason contract would look like, and make a deal with Utah. Trade him a couple first round picks or a couple interesting assets, whatever. That option's no longer on the table because the teams that would do that want a winning player now, which Kessler is, and not a project. So that's what, Utah is now going into the offseason. And unfortunately for Kessler, going into the offseason, basically assuming the plateau approach of, sure, the start to the season was nice, and this is what is disappointing for everybody. The fans' enjoyment of him, his contract situation, the Jazz, their own analysis of the team, is that we only got 5 games to look at him. This didn't happen 40 games in. This happened 5 games in. So you have to approach the offseason of like, it was a nice 5 games walk, but we're going to offer you the contract that we probably told you that we would sign before last season, right? Where we're not going to give you the extension now, but if you wait until July 1st, whenever the free agency starts, we're going to offer you the 4-year, $100 million contract. We're not going to credit you for a decline in your production. We're also not going to credit you for the 5 games that we saw where the 3-point shooting looked real. And the passing, I forgot to mention the passing, my goodness. TBD how much of that was Walk himself versus Hardy's system, but it was because Walker was also turning it over quite a bit. But it was like very acceptable turnovers. He was just making some really great passes out there. And I think he was empowered to be a basketball player a little bit more, which was, I think, fueled a lot of his energy. Really, and the thing I harp on the most about this season, you've heard me talk about it a lot. You need to evaluate young players in reasonably successful lineups. It is not helpful, or it's not as helpful. I don't want to go as far as to say that it's not helpful at all, but it is not as helpful if you're just rolling out 5 guys who don't know what they're doing. The likelihood that those guys are making mistakes that compound on one another is very, very high, and it's hard to isolate individual player mistakes versus individual players' improvement when a lot of this is very orchestral in how the team needs to operate and what individual players' jobs are on a specific possession, both offensively and defensively. So I was very excited going into this season knowing that the team did not have the talent to win more than 30 games, but they could credibly put out lineups for 20 minutes a night that were a problem for opponents. And I think our original starting lineup, of course it's aided by the great Clippers win, our original starting lineup is plus a quadrillion, like plus 20 or something per 100 possessions. And you can evaluate Ace Bailey in that context. You can evaluate Taylor Hendricks in those contexts. You can evaluate Kyle Filipowski in those contexts where can you play alongside Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler? Can you make those players better? Do they make you better? Game 1 to game 82, have you improved? And we certainly know it's not because of the failures of Walker Kessler on the defensive line most of the time. It's because of something you did. How have you improved defensively alongside that? When you replace a very above average, if not great, defensive center with Jusuf Nurkic, who at this stage in his career is below replacement level, especially defensively. I don't think he was even ever better than replacement level defensively. had some fabulous offensive years long, many, many moons ago. Talk about Nurk in a sec. It really makes it difficult to assess defensive improvements over the years, over guys like, or over the season, like for Keyonte George, Bryce Sensabaugh, Ace Bailey, all these guys, all the young guys. Every time we mention the young guys, we have this long laundry list that we have to say. You know what I mean? Like all these young players, the evaluation of them becomes more accurate and easier for the front office to evaluate when there's talent surrounding them. I also think, you've heard me say this 1,000 times before, the minutes that these young players are out there earning or just being given in a lot of the time, you also want it to be in a context of the team giving a shit. And if it's okay if the team is not necessarily going to make the play-in tournament or whatever, these are hyper competitive athletes. Like they always want to win. If you're giving them minutes, they want to play and they want to win. So if we're sitting there in March and the team has no chance of playing, but we're running or making the playoffs and we're running through the tape, and Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler are out there trying to win a random game in March against whomever, and we're not in danger of losing our draft pick or whatever, you can make really good evaluations of how those young players are performing in actually competitive environments. So this sucks. This sucks from a development perspective. We were really relying on Walker Kessler to be just a foundation, stable defensive piece, so that when you're hearing Will Hardy read the riot act on how horrible the defensive performances have been from the perimeter players, it's in that context of, we have such a great defensive center that executing a defensive game plan with Walker Kessler as a perimeter player is super easy. Funnel ball handlers this direction. You read the scouting report, this guy likes to go left. You read the scouting report, this guy likes to go right and throw this kind of pass. And you can do more funneling type of basic defensive strategies when you have a Walker Kessler out there. And the players just weren't executing. Bryce Sensabaugh wasn't executing a single defensive assignment yet this season. When you don't have that stability, it makes coaching defense a little bit more of a mystery box night to night, and you almost have to excuse defensive mistakes because it's like, well, the game plan is too difficult for an Ace Bailey to pick up, and I'm just glad he's out there trying. It becomes really, really hard to evaluate them. Hate it for Walk, who is a fan favorite. I love watching him play. The season has been a revelation for him. Love seeing him have a little bit of a nasty streak this year, trying to earn that next contract. We will get into the season, the off season, and wonder, okay, Jazz on day one of free agency will say, okay, as discussed, here's your 4-year, $100 million contract. Not a lot of teams with cap space to compete with that. But a surprise, I'm just going to mention this now because we probably won't talk about Walker Kessler much throughout the rest of the season, unfortunately. Chicago Bulls are a surprising jumpstart team. They have $1 quadrillion in cap space this summer. They probably have loftier goals than Walker Kessler. However, Nikola Vucevic, what a great Eurobasket for Montenegro, by the way, and was having a fabulous season this year. He's 35. They're probably not going to extend. They probably want the next option at center. Do they offer 4 years, $130 million for Walker Kessler? Jazz will match that, but that'll definitely put us in a little bit more of a tighter bind than we anticipated. So, be an interesting. Walker Kessler's certainly, starting a free agency will have all the time in the world that he can say, okay, thank you, Utah, for offering me that. I'm going to go look for better offers that you have to match. This is not the same as Gordon Hayward, where Utah told Gordon Hayward, we don't believe you can get a max contract, so go, sure, happy hunting, dude. This will be more of a negotiation where Walker Kessler might not even sign an offer sheet or something with Chicago. He might just negotiate Chicago against Utah a little bit and say, like, look, I'll sign this offer sheet in Chicago unless you give me this other incentive or something for me to absolutely stay in Utah. Or he'll just say, you know what, I know Utah will match anything. I'm not going to negotiate you guys against each other at all. I'm just going to sign this Chicago offer sheet because I know Utah will have to match it. Very Paul Millsappy type of situation. So we'll see. I think I feel the most bummed because of how early in the season it is. I think we would have all been comfortable with this kind of season where we owe a top 8 protected pick, and we knew eventually, despite Austin Ainge's comments otherwise, eventually if the Jazz were like a pretty normal bad team, eventually they would pull the plug. Eventually they'd pull the plug on sitting guys in February, March, whatever, to make sure that they don't lose that top 8 protected pick to Oklahoma City. And so we all kind of walked into the season thinking, all right, let's get to February and see how the team looks. Make some trade deadline moves and then see you in the offseason. And now it feels like, and it certainly felt like tonight against Detroit, just like an incomplete evaluation of young players night to night. Especially because with Jusuf Nurkic, played 33 minutes tonight. 6 points, 17 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals. 2 of 8 from the field, 0 of 2 from 3. Despite his off-season workout videos, Jusuf Nurkic still can't hit threes. Apparently Walker Kessler can. That was just terrific, watching him shoot threes. One of them was a no-dip contested 3, by the way. You should watch all of his Walker Kessler's 3. It won't be a long video. You should watch those. But with Jusuf Nurkic, first of all, I don't know if anyone remembers this. Jusuf Nurkic is not a bastion of health himself. He's had a litany of health concerns over his entire career. So having him around as just like a 15-minute guy is okay. Like, Colin Sexton is the objectively better player. Don't know why we gave up a draft pick to make that trade kind of function, but we have a useful backup center. And the story on Nurkic is, as long as he's giving a shit, he actually gives you pretty competent center play. Problem was he ruffled a lot of feathers in Phoenix, and he he didn't exactly want to be in Charlotte, although Charlotte was starved at the time for center play. Now they have what looks like a great late first round find in Ryan Kalkbrenner, and Moussa Diabate is looking a little bit better, even though he's quite undersized. But they were starved for center play from anything. So Nurkic actually helped Charlotte at the end of last year, but they didn't have LaMelo Ball at this time. They weren't really trying. It's a whole thing. So he's a mercurial guy, and so can you keep him happy? And keeping a guy like him happy is not just like give him minutes and he'll be happy. He's a mercurial fellow where he kind of wants a life purpose. It seems a little bit of a mystery. I think this is the team environment so far that has kept him happy, where it's like, hey, Nurk, we're going to design an offense where the 5, because we've got a Walk, we've got a Kyle Filipowski, we've got you. Like, we want you guys to be distributing the ball a little bit more. Also, we don't have any point guard. Like, you're walking into the season thinking, Keyonte George is not capable of being a lead guard at the time, right? This is before the season training camp. Isaiah Collier is very, very young, while Clayton's a rookie. Collier has his flaws, and we don't know. So we're going to need you to come in for your 15 to 20 minutes a night and really juice us up. And we value you, and we just want you as a person around. And he's got a couple other European guys on the team. He's got Svi Mykhailiuk, he's got Lauri Markkanen, and that sort of thing. And I felt really like seeing what Nurk's attitude was the first little bit of the season. Got the game winner against Boston a couple nights ago. Keyonte George had a narrow miss on a game-winning shot himself, but Nurk got the offensive rebound. I'm loving how just massive Nurk is. He's clear up 275 pounds, and guys like Chris Boucher and Neemias Keita had no chance trying to box him out for offensive rebounds in that game. It was just fun to watch. and he gets the win, and it seems like he's very well loved by that team. But he's not going to hold up. That was a long sidebar to say, like, Nurk isn't going to hold up. We got nothing. Zilch, nada behind that dude. He should not be playing 33 minutes a night. He's clearing, 34 now? How old is Yusuf Nurkic? So he's only 31. Seems like an old 31. He 31 in 74 days, so he just turned 31 in August. But with his health history, it's like this is not a 30-minute night a game guy anymore. We've got no center prospects behind him, right? So we've talked extensively that Kyle Filipowski is just not a center, right? He cannot hold up. He is a zero defensively at center. Even if you're a bad defender defensively, you need to be credible. He's just not even remotely credible as a center. So right now he's a very slow 4. You can't even say, okay, small ball lineup, Filipowski at the 5. No, that just means you have a slow 5 now. So it's the same problem. So having him out there at the 4 guarding the team's worst offensive player, which a lot of teams as you run into during a regular season will have a player for Filipowski to just hide on. But if Filipowski's your 5, now you have a little bit of an issue, right? So I could see lineups where Taylor Hendricks and Filipowski are your front court, and Taylor Hendricks is playing more of the 5. However, we got some issues with Taylor Hendricks as well, which I will get into. So Nurk can't hold up. Kevin Love is now backup center. Sorry, Kevin Love, you're playing 15 minutes a night. Didn't know if you'd expect that for the entire season. Maybe he knew he was going to play some spot duty here and there, but no, now you get the whole season, buddy. Okay. And God bless Oscar Tshiebwe, but I think Tshiebwe's already reached his ceiling, right? Like, just a crazy rebounding G League force. I mean, we saw him in Summer League. Not really a whole lot of room for Oscar to grow, I don't think. Beloved teammate, seems like a very cool guy with his tiny cowboy hat. So there are some rumblings around the social media sphere of like, all right, so Keyonte George looks fabulous this year. Walter Clayton is starting from a great baseline as a rookie, it looks like. Where's Isaiah Collier's place on the team? Is there a second-year challenge trade that we can do where some team that needs a point guard development prospect and they have a big man center prospect? Is there some sort of challenge trade we can do there where this ostensible backup center you're trading for is not only someone you can work on this year, but is someone you can plug in as Kessler's backup next year and for years to come? I don't know if that guy exists. You certainly don't want to trade Collier for an older player because Collier has mystery prospect value because like Walter Clayton this year, Collier showed enough NBA stuff last year that you want to kind of see where that goes with him, even with his flaws. Like, Collier's just not a guy you write off just because the guy can't shoot yet. Not at all. No, it's not the same as someone like Cody Williams, where you're looking at Cody Williams on the floor and thinking, I don't see anything. There's nothing NBA level here. Collier had some NBA stuff, so I think there is some intrigue as to what the Jazz could do even before the trade deadline to maybe shore up the center position, because I don't think again, not for winning games, right? Like, this is one of the things where, well, with the Walker Kessler injury, you're not worried about the Jazz winning too many games now, huh? You're not getting a center to win games. It's more to shore up 48 minutes of credible center play so that you can appropriately evaluate the other players on the team. And make Lauri Markkanen not hate himself while he's out there, right? Um, Big bummer. Tony Jones mentioned something in his piece at The Athletic that this is an injury that started in college, and that elicited a big head tilt from me. Is this a small labral tear that just got bigger and bigger and bigger over time? I am not a doctor. I've had a litany of knee issues, so I know way too much about knee recovery and replacement and all that nonsense from my own personal experience. But I thankfully don't have any shoulder concerns yet. Tony's the only person who's mentioned something about this being identified in college. And boy, that brings in a big, big, big head tilt for me, because is this not something that, okay, so Walk finishes his second season, he misses a bunch of time for a litany of other injuries. He's in and out of the lineup. And I understand that the recovery is obvious. We've mentioned it's 4, 5, 6, 7 months for a surgery of this nature. Is that not something we could do in February, March? And he's ready for the season coming up the next year? If this is an injury that started in college? Did Walk think that he was just going to play his entire career without ever having to fix this? I have big, big, big mystery concerns about that. That confused me greatly. I'm not suggesting any malice or ill will here. Obviously, Walker wanted to play this year. He was playing fabulously and was going to get way more money than he was expected to get if by playing as well as he had. So obviously, he did not have an incentive to not play. Obviously, he wanted to be out there. But it's just weird to me that this isn't something that Walk's camp and Utah didn't ever look at any of these tanking seasons that Utah's had. Every season that Walk has been here, and said like, hey, you know what? Let's get that shoulder thing fixed before like we're a competitive team again. So now we lose an entire season of development for him. So it's just a bummer. Lots of things have been said about Keyonte George. And I just want to be yet another voice to pile on. I'm so, so happy. One of the things that has felt so desolate about this Utah Jazz past couple years is that nothing's hitting. Sure, the Jazz have not had the first overall pick due to bad luck or middling drafts that we weren't trying for, but nothing seemed to work at all. Taylor Hendricks loses an entire season. Cody Williams looks awful. Filipowski and Collier are late picks, so they kind of develop a little bit. And Keyonte George looked awful. So nothing was hitting. Bryce Sensabaugh, okay, he shoots really nice from 3, and he's already on a developing team. He can't get minutes because he can't defend a paper bag. Himself out of a paper bag or a paper bag. Pick your version of that idiom. And already we can permanently say there is a huge leap that Keyonte George has taken that pretty much everybody except for Jazz personnel, David Locke included, saw coming. That did not see coming. I forget how I started that sentence, but we didn't see this coming. The reason we didn't see this Keyonte George explosion coming is because of his public persona and his public attitude towards his play and towards his development. I get further and further from the actual quote he said at the end of media every time I tell this, at the end of the season media availability last season every time I tell this, but when one of the reporters asked him at the end of the season, hey, what do you think you can work on for next year? Where do you see your biggest sources of improvement? And the typical answer for most players is just to say, gotta work on my shot more, my buckets gotta go in, or I really gotta work on defense, or I gotta get physically stronger, whatever. Just give a simple answer. And he gave these cryptic quotes about I need to earn more respect in this league and hit more tough mid-range floaters or mid-range shots. I need to make more tough shots and get more respect in the league or something. When he has like this CVS receipt list of flaws to work on. And coming into this season, we have since learned that Will Hardy basically lit into him and said, like, this is it. This year is it, or you just, it's clear you don't have a future in the NBA. And now we're hearing reports from everyone who's around the team that this guy is not the same person. And attribute that to Will Hardy talking to him. You can attribute that to the whole story about, like, this is the first time in his entire life since junior high that he's been in one place for longer than 2 years. You can attribute it to the team ostensibly trying to win this year, so they're telling him we need to rely. Whatever it is, I don't really care to get into the psychology of it because I'm not around it and I can't make prognostications about this. What I can say is that it's clearly he's different. I was pretty dismayed today in the Detroit game. We saw a lot of old Keyonte in today's game, a lot of foul baiting nonsense and horrible shot taking and trying to be a hero when the offense is working just fine if you just give Lowry some touches, give Nurkic some touches, like move the offense normally. The ball is finding its way back to you with an advantage, straight line drive, draw a foul. His season has been so remarkable in a way that I really appreciated, where he is using tempo and speed and advantage to just create these wide open drives to the basket for himself. And it's just straight line wide open layup or straight line contested layup that the defense has no choice but to follow him. He's made a couple mid-range shots that have just been wide open. He's shooting like 25% from three. And although we've harangued about his three-point shooting in his first 2 years, he's not a 25% shooter. He's shooting like 90.999% from the free throw line this year. So we know he's a difficult three-point shot maker, and he can shoot 33 to 35% of his shots. So right now he's in like the third percentile the 1/3, so like 30 to 35 percentile for effective field goal percentage. Well, if you just boost his three-point shooting above 25%, he becomes a pretty damn above league average shooter for the point guard position. Patience. He's got so much damn patience now. He's not rushing a shot. He's not trying to be a hero. He's executing just offense with other players on the team and knowing exactly where other players' spots are. He's never going to be a fly-around defender, but man, is he giving a shit every night. He was hopeless against Cade Cunningham today. Cade Cunningham abused Keyonte and Svi Mykhailiuk in the fourth quarter. He had like 18 fourth-quarter points today. But it was one of those things where the Jazz didn't have a defender to stop him, so Key was just kind of fed to the wolves there a little bit. And Key looked pretty exhausted at the end of it. Road trip, unfamiliar city, different time zone, whatever. There is a permanent change to Keyonte George. And the reason I'm so happy is now it seems like you got a stew going. Now it seems with Walk and Lowry and Keyonte, it seemed like we really had a stew going. A shape of a team was taking hold. Without Walk, that stew might need to have to simmer for quite a bit longer. So I think Key and Yusuf Nurkic have a good playing relationship. Yusuf Nurkic made a comment after the Boston game. No, it was the game before, perhaps. Either way. Key scored 31. He had 31, 5, and 4 the other night. And Nurkic said he saw a lot of Damian Lillard in Keyonte George. Now, Nurkic is not just a former Damian Lillard teammate. There are a few long stories about Lillard and Nurkic being very close friends. Maybe we keep Nurkic and he recruits Lillard It'll be like 48 by the time he comes back to Utah. I'm half kidding. It's no small praise for Nurkic to invoke Lillard's name. And I think that's really special for Keyonte. I really look forward to seeing how Keyonte permanently establishes these improvements throughout the year. Less bullshit hero ball, more point guard. I didn't think he had it in him. It's clear that he does. And when I say attitude, you just see reporters saying like, okay, in seasons past he would be like the like in the Moneyball scene where Giambi is dancing after a loss, and Brad Pitt's character, right, he gets all furious and say like, hey, is this what you do after a loss? Apparently Keyonte was one of those Giambi types who still was laughing and joking after a loss and wasn't necessarily taking the winning habits seriously. And now he's just polar opposite, where he's just all business all the time. He'll always have some levity to him. I'll never forget the first game where he was able to... he got a bucket at like the end of a quarter, or an and one bucket or something. He ended up sprawling over the floor, and he did a raise his eyebrows a bunch of times and smiled at the camera. That was pretty fun. So he'll always have some levity to him, which we need. We can't be just all serious all the time. But he's taking the craft seriously, whether it's for the team or because he realizes like, hey, if I do these things, if I do all the boring stuff all the time, I've got $100 million, $150 million coming down the pike. Very excited for him. Do some quick hits on some other guys that I've kind of noticed, and I feel like people are talking about a lot. I'm not going to lie, Ace Bailey doesn't look good out there. I think you can effectively wash away the first 4 games. I don't think those are important at all. I don't think he would have even played in the first 2 if it wasn't for a little bit of fan excitement to be like, you can't have the home opener, and just because he's got the flu, he can't get out there, or he's even recovered from the flu, you can't get him out there for 10 to 15 minutes. He can play 20 minutes. But these last 4 games, every time he touches the basketball, it's like his mind goes blank. He's made a couple nice passes here and there, but he's always the 4th or 5th option on whatever lineup he's in, which is notable considering that he's coming off the bench and not typically playing with good players. And he looks really lost out there. He physically looks great, and you can't peg too much on preseason nonsense. But there were like actual NBA players he was playing against in preseason, and he looked very good and not lost, and just free-flowing basketball, just kind of feeling the flow as far as where should I make the pass, where should I take a shot. And I feel like he's been coached. You have 2 things you're allowed to do. You're allowed to do catch and shoot threes, or you're allowed to dribble in and take a mid-range shot that you're very good at. Don't even think about calling for a screen or something and doing something like off the dribble. Like you're not allowed to do that yet. And it's like he's in his own head that he's trying to operate within a box that's been assigned to him. I don't know if that's true or not, of course. But it feels like whenever he gets the ball, he's trying so hard not to fuck up that he fucks up a lot. And he's one of the many culprits defensively who is forgetting the game plan on how to guard a guy, like where to funnel him and all that kind of thing. On the defense point, by the way, for all the young guys, I keep mentioning like the funneling aspect. I don't think that NBA defenders today can possibly defend in general, night to night, can defend just squaring up a guy and preventing them from going somewhere. Offensive players are too good. You don't have to be Kyrie Irving, but like I think of so many of these offensive players have such amazing first steps, or they are using screens in such a way that's creative and advanced and very, very skilled, that just locking a guy up defensively is so, so rare on a night-to-night basis. When you get to the playoffs, I think there's a little bit more spotlight and attention and just learning an opponent's tendencies over a 7-game series to like really figure out how to square up and defend. But this isn't like the 90s anymore, where offensive players were quite limited and you weren't worried about off the dribble threes from 30 feet. Like, there are so many new skills that offensive players have now that I don't think the average or even below average or even above average perimeter defenders are expected to just like lock a guy up in isolation or pick and roll situations. And coaches know this, so a lot of NBA defense nowadays is not about, okay, you just got to lock your guy up. It's about, if you're going to do anything, force him that way. If this guy comes up to set a screen, you go under. If depending on who the ball handler is, if he has a shot or not. And if you're not executing the basic rules of the team construct defense, you ruin it for everyone else. Here's my favorite stat on this team so far. And by favorite, I mean just uncomfortably stupid. But I think it goes exactly to this team defense point and how much the perimeter defenders are struggling. Svi Mykhailiuk, when he is on the floor, and he started every game, the team is 23 plus, 23.3 points, but I'll say 23. When Svi Mykhailiuk is on the floor, they are 23 points per 100 possessions better on defense. That's not all Walker Kessler. Svi is a bad defender. But because the team is so bad defensively, behind him, when you're bringing in the Bryce Sensabaughs and the Ace Baileys and the Walt Clayton, that his defense is so much better than them. 23 points better defensively when Svi Mykhailiuk is on the floor. That should not happen for someone who's bad at defense. That'd be in the 98th percentile, by the way. And Svi is not an atrocious defender. I'll give him a little bit of a credit. Like, he's a gamer and he understands. So the whole point is, like, he's executing the game plan. He knows what direction to funnel guys and that sort of thing. And so the team defense ends up looking remotely competent when he's out there. And I just got to give this guy, Svi Mykhailiuk, a whole lot of credit. I think we're going to be, we're all so annoyed. I mean, I'm annoyed too. I'm with you guys. That, yeah, I want to see 35 minutes Ace Bailey. What is this guy, Svi Mykhailiuk, doing out there? He's on this odd contract, right? I forget. We signed him to this 4-year non-guaranteed contract. Does he have 2 years left on it? I feel like I asked this question last podcast, and now I'm looking this up live, which makes for great radio. Yeah, so he signed this 4-year, basically non-guaranteed contract that goes through 2027, 28 season. So he's got 2 years after this. And we all want the younger players to play ahead of him because he's 28. What is he doing? Like, I think a lot of us were saying, why didn't we keep Johnny Juzang over Svi Mykhailiuk? Man, he's pretty fine out there. I can't be upset when the team is playing better with him on the floor than not. When we get into January, we'll all start having some different stories, right? Mainly, I want to see Ace Bailey and Bryce Sensabaugh and Walt Clayton. I'm sorry. I want to see those guys playing alongside Keyonte and Lowry, and to a lesser extent, Yusuf Nurkic. Like I want to see them playing alongside the A team and learning habits of opposing starting lineups. Like if you're starting a game, this is the skill and the pace that the starters of good teams play with. Like you play Golden State, I don't think the film will be good, and it might even be a negative development experience. Who knows? If we tell Ace Bailey, hey, you got to deal with the Golden State offense with their starting lineup. We're going to give you 700 rules, and you're going to play 34 minutes tonight, and you better remember them all. And if you don't, well, it'll be teaching tape. And so I don't want to veer too far in the direction that it seems like I'm headed, and I know some of my colleagues would agree to some extent with this. I don't think it's anti-value to throw guys into the fire. I think you can hurt development if the entire team is unserious. Like in New Orleans this year, right? Like I think that they're pretty much forced to, but if they need to end up starting Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears all season for a team that wins 15 games, like you could really learn some bad habits that become permanent. You got to worry about those. I'm less worried about throwing guys into the fire if there's a reasonable expectation of winning every night. Yes, the Jazz will be underdogs every night, but there's a reasonable expectation if Lowry and Keyonte are playing well that you're trying to win that game, especially at home. And you can walk away from 32 minutes of terrible Ace Bailey defense over competent Svi Mykhailiuk and say the future of our franchise depends on taking those terrible 32 minutes and sitting down with Ace and teaching him things and having practice sessions and going over those things so that he can maybe do things differently the next time around. He doesn't get a next time around if he doesn't get the first time around. So for now, because Svi is playing so averagely, and I mean that as a compliment, he's such a good average player right now. Good for him. He was almost out of the NBA. No, I don't think the Jazz are necessarily going to get a second-round pick out of trading Svi Mykhailiuk. But I like having him out there to make this is how the defense should be run. See what Svi did there? Use his tape as an example of what we're thinking about, what we're doing. Svi has also been way less trigger happy with his shot. Svi's playing within himself. His usage rate is way down compared to what it used to be. In his prior stops. In prior stops, he would just be like, look, I'm on my last NBA contract. I don't know when I'm going to be out of the NBA, so I'm shooting this thing whenever I get it, and I'm going to have some fun. He's being entrusted that, don't worry, you're a part of this team. Just please execute. and he's performing quite well there. I will be as itchy as all of the rest of you if we get into January and it's still just like 15 minutes of Ace Bailey compared to 25 minutes of Svi Mykhailiuk. I don't see how that's materially different. Especially because I think if I were Will Hardy, and I'm not because I could never be, I want to see Ace Bailey in the context of more freedom playing alongside great players. Don't just put him in a box to say, like, look, we don't know what you can or can't do, but when you're playing alongside the backups, if you just do these couple things, we'll go from there. What if he establishes more of a rapport with Lowry? And that grows all throughout to February and March. And like we can work on things in the offseason with the two of them and with Keyonte. Get a jump start on next season. I'll get a little itchy if this persists for too long. But for now, you just can't complain about Mykhailiuk actually being decent out there. Speaking of low usage, we got to talk about Taylor Hendricks. And I think I am just a touch perturbed at people being so quick to say, well, he's just coming back from the horrific leg injury. You have to wait. Sorry, Mark, you have to wait. He's starting right now, and he's getting Keith Bogansed, where he's starting the game and doesn't play a lot of minutes. Played 18 minutes tonight. His usage rate is 11.5%. Folks, 11.5% is like less than Royce O'Neal was, where Taylor Hendricks doesn't do anything when he's on the court offensively. And tonight against the Pistons is a great example of we had no size to compete with Cade Cunningham. He was shooting over guys, and he had the speed where we didn't have a speed advantage having Svi or Keyonte guard him. You know who would have been a great defender on Cade Cunningham? How about Taylor Hendricks? Not even close. We had Kyle Filipowski closing tonight. Think we're going to have Kyle Filipowski guard Cade Cunningham? Absolutely not. Cade Cunningham did try to shoot like a 32 3-point shot over Filipowski at the end that did not go in. And of course, the Pistons got the offensive rebound. Taylor Hendricks is not good right now. Like, he's very not good. The athleticism, the explosion is non-existent right now. His mental approach to defense is not there right now. And without Walker, he needs to start being a communicator right away. He's going to be the best ostensible rim protector that we have. Ball's not going in the basket. You know, he's only shot 11 threes. Made 3 of them. He needs to shoot more of those, and more of them, frankly, need to go in. He's almost like a better version of Cody Williams right now, where when he's out there, you just don't notice him. He's just kind of there. Gets a few offensive rebounds here and there, which is nice. And there just isn't... He's only played 100 minutes. 110 minutes about. Which is enough to, like, analyze him with the eye test. But 110 minutes isn't enough to, like, use stats to, like, evaluate him at all. So we're going to have to wait a minute to, like... You know, you want, like, 200 to 400 minutes before you're like, all right, what are some trends about Taylor Hendricks? But usage is something you can identify right away, right? Like, what are you doing when you're out there? And the answer right now is just nothing. And the reason I'm annoyed about, like, the leg injury excuse is, like, I think it's remarkable that he's out there and he looks like a good basketball-sized player out there. And his brother right now is playing for UVU, which is very, very cool. But when I mentioned Keyonte and I mentioned things need to hit to start building something from somewhere, I was very optimistic on Taylor Hendricks, saying, look, yeah, you did have a horrible leg injury, but that was over a year ago. We've watched your rehab. We've watched your personality grow. Like, it was fair for us to have a lot of optimism as to say, like, this is a guy who I think can shoot and I think can defend. I think we have something here. There's a real guy here. So I have a lot of faith in Taylor Hendricks throughout the entire... It's a long season. We've played 8 games. And there's going to be... He's learning how to play, you know, competent NBA professional basketball. I just thought I think this is where my annoyance comes in. The reason I'm kind of perturbed is I'd rather see a guy out there really balls to the wall, making a bunch of mistakes, but like he's flying around out there, and it's like, okay, let's harness everything about this wild energy, because he's the scouting report from drafting him was, look at this amazing athlete. He can shoot, he can dunk, he can block, you can build something from this wild player. And for him to be like passive and kind of a wallflower on both ends of the court is what do you do from there? Like, I want you to be way more mistake prone. I want you to be out there being a little bit more wild and athletic. And right now it's just big Cody Williams. So I wanted to kind of touch upon Taylor just a tiny bit. That I'm starting to do a little head tilt on concern about him. This has been a very, very fun start to the season. I would be closing tonight with effusive enthusiasm on the games to come and everything, but the Walker injury really does put a dampening on things. So I'm going to continue to monitor the Keyonte George, Lauri Markkanen combo and how the Utah is trying to get those two guys going. And if Keyonte continues to make correct decisions, even if hero ball feels like in his gut the correct thing to do, knowing that the way that this offense is going to operate is if you just go from point A to point B, dude. I also think Keyonte is going to have like a 45-point game this year. He's going to go nuclear one night. I just hope it happens in like November, December, then March. I want it to happen against a good team where we have most of our roster playing. I think I'm really excited to watch him this year now. If he didn't do this and we had lost Walker Kessler, if we just had like bad Keyonte George and no Walker Kessler, I don't know what I'd do. But we now have it's Keyonte and Lauri as the fulcrum of watching the rest of the youth grow with them, because Keyonte has now kind of reached a point where I like watching him play. Going full circle to Keyonte discussion earlier. So that's all I got for tonight. You'll catch us every week. Maybe we'll have some partners. Maybe we won't. Maybe it'll just be listening to me wax poetic about random jazz musings. I'm sure I forgot a lot of things, but those are the main things I wanted to get off my chest and talk to you about. Jazz schedule coming up. Still on the road. We got Minnesota on Friday. Anthony Edwards is back. At least he was probable tonight. Let me make sure he actually played. Yeah, he played tonight in a 23-point loss at New York. So this will be his first game back. He's warming up from his injury. So they'll be itching to get a win against the Jazz at home. And then it's a home and home. We'll play Minnesota again on Monday in Utah. After the Phoenix overtime win, we were looking at the schedule thinking, oh man, Jazz could be 5-2 or something crazy. 6-2. It's looking like the season we all kind of expected. I still think over 18.5 wins is a near lock still. And they've already got 3 wins banked. This over 18.5 will happen easily. You'll catch us next week where we'll have a couple Minnesota games to talk about, and hopefully no other season-long injuries. Maybe some more details on the Walker injury as well. What's up with that college background? I want to learn more about that. Okay, my name is Mark Russell Pereira. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to Salt City Hoops.